Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I could stand here and repeat the horrifying atrocities committed by Hamas on October 7th, when there was a ceasefire in place that was violated by Hamas's planned massacre. I could discuss the mass rape and mutilation of women, the burning of entire families alive, the beheading of babies. But I have already stood here and showed you footage from that dark day. I have repeatedly discussed the horrors and the bloodshed, but sadly this body prefers to keep its head in the sand. Sadly, this is what the UN has become. So instead of talking about the past, I will try to remind this body of the present and talk about the future. The future that awaits us if the Hamas Nazis are not eliminated. If there's a ceasefire that will allow Hamas to regroup, to rearm, to continue their reign of terror in Gaza. That's the meaning of a ceasefire. This resolution that so many of you, sickeningly, I have no other word, applauded, calls for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. So I must ask you today, what does this mean? What is a humanitarian ceasefire? Is it a ceasefire for 6 hours to allow food and water to enter Gaza? Clearly not, seeing as every single day Israel facilitates the entry of hundreds of tons of food and water. Is it a ceasefire for 3 days so that medical supplies and fuel can enter? The answer is also no, as truckloads of these supplies enter Gaza through Israeli facilitation every day. How about a week-long ceasefire to evacuate wounded civilians? No again. This is already happening on the ground, alongside field hospitals and floating hospital ships. Israel facilitates all these efforts. So I ask again, what is the meaning of this humanitarian ceasefire? There's no such a thing. This is one big lie, a whitewashing of the truth. A humanitarian ceasefire means a terrorist-saving ceasefire. We're not stupid. This resolution only seeks an end to the war against Hamas Nazis. Sorry for the words. You don't give a damn about Israel and our future. An end to the war means turning our backs on the hostages. It means ensuring Hamas's continued rule in Gaza. I don't get it. We're 18 years of oppression in Gaza, by the way, against Palestinians, digging terror tunnels into our soil, into our territory, and indiscriminate rocket fires, thousands and thousands on Israeli civilians. That wasn't enough for you? All a ceasefire secures is a future for the genocidal jihadists. It is only Hamas that this resolution is defending. Stop hiding your intentions behind your suits and diplomatic wording. Humanitarian ceasefire. This resolution has a distorted agenda. At least make this clear to all member states. This resolution aims to keep Hamas in power. Period. And for those of you who may have forgotten, I want to remind you who these savage terrorists are. Because you could have said something else in your resolution. You could have called them to turn themselves in, to release all the hostages. Then the war would end tomorrow morning. Hamas is currently holding 132 hostages in Gaza. These innocents were brutally taken from their beds, from a party, from the arms of their loved ones, and they are absolutely not being treated in accordance with international law. Hamas refused to even allow the Red Cross to visit them, the most severe crimes that can exist. And this body cannot even bring itself to say their name, Hamas, Hamas. Such cowardice. But now, after some of the hostages have been released, we are beginning to hear the horror stories of what they endured. One of the released hostages, an agricultural worker from Thailand, described that the Israeli hostages held with him were tortured with electric cables. 18-year-old Itai Regev recounted that after being taken hostage, he was operated upon by Hamas without anesthesia, without. His sister Maya, by the way, who was shot in the leg before being abducted, had her bone fracture mended backwards by Hamas. 12-year-old Eitan Yahalomi was held in solitary confinement for 16 days, during which he was forced to watch the atrocities of the Hamas Nazis at gunpoint. When he cried, Hamas ISIS threatened to kill him. All of you here, all of you who have children, think about this for a moment. Hamas forced children to watch their families and friends be butchered. 9-year-old Emily Hand spent 50 days as a hostage. You know what happens? Today, weeks after her release, she still cannot speak. She's too afraid. She can only whisper. She's just whispering. Why? Because Hamas terrorists threatened to murder her if she made even the slightest sound in the terror tunnel where she was being held. There are still 132 hostages being held in Gaza. 10-month-old Kfir Bibas and his 4-year-old brother Ariel are still being held hostage. Therefore, for heaven's sake, I cannot begin to imagine the horrors they face every single day. Women, children, the elderly are suffering the unimaginable. So calling for a ceasefire now, while they are still being held, is the most immoral thing to do. If this body wants a ceasefire, then it should first and foremost be doing everything possible to bring all of the hostages home. And colleagues, empty words are just lip service. Words are not enough. Yet, instead, it's the Hamas monsters capable of exterminating families and torturing children that this body has chosen to defend. I'm sorry, it's abhorrent and it's disgraceful. But colleagues, Hamas not only cares nothing for Israelis and Gazans, I'll surprise you, they also care nothing for Islam. Nothing. I don't know how, according to Islam, Hamas was permitted to rape and sexually abuse women and girls. I don't know. Maybe it's because Hamas doesn't consider Israelis as human beings? But since October 7th, Hamas has fired over 11,000 rockets and missiles at Israel. And today, Hamas proved that murdering Israelis is even more important than preserving the Islamic holy sites they claim to protect. Watch this video. Just hours ago, Hamas rocket was fired towards the vicinity of the Temple Mount, Haram el-Sharif. And the Iron Dome, Israel's Iron Dome, intercepted the missile and defended Al-Aqsa Mosque from Hamas. Think about this. Israel is defending Al-Aqsa Mosque from Hamas's missiles. To the Arab League, to the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, I ask, this is who you have chosen to defend? A group of genocidal terrorists that prefer jihad at any cost over Islamic holy sites? Just as ISIS destroyed mosques, Hamas, ISIS is willing to blow up Al-Aqsa. And so many of you are willing to defend them. Unbelievable. Mr. President, Israel's operation in Gaza is not a response to October 7th. It's not. It is to ensure, only to ensure, that such atrocities never happen again. And the only way to do so is to obliterate Hamas's capabilities. There's no other way. There's no other option. Hamas is a cancer and it must be eradicated. And every resolution passed here that doesn't support Hamas's elimination only serves to empower these terrorists and promote a future of regional suffering. Regional. This is what Hamas's Iranian puppet masters want. We know it. But I cannot understand why the Sunni countries of the world are playing along. This is why no matter how many destructive resolutions this body adopts, Israel cannot stop until Hamas is defeated. This is about our future. This is about our survival. And no General Assembly resolution, I apologize, no General Assembly resolution will force us to commit a collective suicide. We will defend ourselves and we will defend our future. Thank you, Mr. President.
The Jobnet.